We're all looking for it, aren't we? That one thing, that leverage point,
Hmm.
the one change that gives you these, exponential results without needing to put in 10 times the effort.
And we've all done it. We've cycled through, what, 100 different productivity hacks looking for that magic bullet.
Exactly. And that's why today we're doing a deep dive into a system that, well, it claims to be exactly that, the ultimate leverage point.
That really is the mission for this deep dive. We're looking at source material that's centered around this one uh, powerful but remarkably simple idea: protecting 2 non-negotiable hours every single day.
2 hours, it sounds so simple.
It does, but the material argues that the huge life shifts that people spend years, agonizing over, things like identity, focus, real long-term accomplishment,
Yeah.
they don't actually require more motivation or some complicated new plan.
So you just require the small protected window of time.
That's the core claim.
And I find that premise.
Well, it's fascinating because it goes against everything we're taught. It challenges that fundamental belief that if we just work harder or find more hours in the day, that's how we'll succeed.
Right. It's a total reframe.
What we're looking at here is the idea of treating these 2 hours as something priceless, not a luxury you hope to find at the end of the day.
No, it's a commitment, something you have to fiercely protect. The whole idea is to shift the conversation away from willpower and effort and towards structure.
Okay, so let's talk about that structure. Why does it supposedly work?
Well, to really get it, the sources introduce these 2 invisible forces that are kind of constantly shaping our reality, often completely without our awareness.
And this 2-hour habit is designed to work with those forces.
Yes, exactly. To counteract one and to harness the other.
All right, let's set the stage then. The first force. This is the antagonist in the story, right? It's what the source material calls autopilot. Autopilot. It's the perfect name for it. It's your default mode. It's like the background operating system running your life when your conscious attention is somewhere else, when it's scattered.
So it's the state of just reacting.
Constantly reacting. It's the force that's always stealing your focus through this endless stream of tiny little stimuli. The notifications, the need for an immediate response, other people's emergencies becoming your emergencies.
It keeps you busy, it keeps you moving, but nothing actually changes.
You're just spinning your wheels. It prevents any kind of intentional long-term progress.
Oh, we've all been there. It's that feeling, like you're paddling as hard as you can all day long, but then you look up at the end of the week and you realize the current just carried you in a big circle.
That's it, precisely. And then on the other side, you have the powerful counterforce, the one we actually want to harness, and that's compounding.
Compounding. We usually hear that word in finance, right? Interest, earning interest.
Yeah, that's the common context. But here, we're applying that quiet, unstoppable law to our personal growth, to our lives.
So it's not just about money growing, it's about what? Effort growing.
It's about small, daily, consistent actions growing into something truly massive over time. The sources talk about that 1% improvement every day. It doesn't just add up, it multiplies. And the argument here is, what if you applied that principle not just to your work output, but to the quality of your attention?
The quality of your attention, that's a really interesting way to put it.
The results, they claim, are profound.
So if we take this framework, the real problem for most of us isn't a lack of ambition, it's not.
It's not a lack of talent, not at all. The problem is that most people live almost their entire lives under the influence of autopilot.
They're just exhausted and distracted.
Completely. They're running on reaction. And because of that, they never, ever get to benefit from the magic of compounding.
So all that hard work, all that effort, it just gets scattered.
Scattered, reactive, and instantly consumed by the noise of the system. It just disappears. And that's why people feel so perpetually unfulfilled. They wonder why, despite all this effort, does nothing fundamentally shift?
Which brings us back to the promise of this 2-hour habit. It's not just another time management tool.
No, it's a mechanism for internal transformation. It's so much deeper because it's about changing who you are.
It's not about doing more, it's about becoming different.
That's the line that stands out. These 2 hours are the daily doorway out of that excuse loop, out of the repetitive cycle that autopilot traps you in. And the most crucial shift, the real leverage, happens in the quality of your mind and the stability of your nervous system.
That's the key, isn't it? The leverage point. When the quality of your mind stabilizes, everything else just starts to fall into line.
Your decision-making gets better, your habits become easier to stick with, and maybe most importantly, your identity starts to shift.
You start to see yourself as someone who actually follows through.
And the sources are, they're emphatic on this. Once your internal identity truly changes, once you really deep down believe you're a focused, intentional person, your life on the outside has no choice but to adjust to that new reality.
So this is a calm, disciplined system.
Very calm. It completely avoids that motivational roller coaster of highs and lows. It's a structural fix that pulls you out of reaction and puts you back in the driver's seat.
Okay, let's dig deeper into the enemy here, into autopilot. Because the sources, they challenge this huge self-defeating assumption that we all make.
Hmm. That time is the problem.
That time is the limiting factor.
Right. If you ask most people why they aren't working on their biggest goals, they'd say, oh, I just don't have enough time, or I'll do it when I get a break, or the classic, when things finally slow down.
Which they never do.
They never do. And the deeply uncomfortable truth that the sources lay out is that time is usually just a red herring. Autopilot is the real enemy.
I think of autopilot as like the invisible inertia of my current life. It's the default setting my mind just snaps back to whenever I'm tired or stressed or just overloaded.
And it thrives on unconsciousness. It loves when you're not paying attention. And the way it operates is so insidious because it doesn't show up as some spectacular failure.
No big crash and burn.
No. It's an act of erosion. It's literally thousands of tiny, seemingly harmless, unconscious decisions that you make all day long.
Can you give me a few examples of that erosion? I think that's important because if it doesn't feel like a big deal in the moment, we don't fight it.
Sure. Think about the moment you pick up your phone without thinking. That 1 minute of checking social media that turns into 15, or responding to a non-urgent text message immediately instead of finishing the thought you were having.
Or getting sucked into a news cycle instead of, creating something of your own.
Exactly. Individually, each of those things is negligible. It's nothing. But cumulatively,
Yeah.
they are devastating. They are the hidden cost of inattention.
So autopilot isn't crashing the plane. It's just slowly, quietly drilling holes in the hull until one day you realize you're sinking.
That's a perfect analogy. It leads to that pervasive feeling of movement without progress.
Yeah.
Busyness without any real accomplishment.
You work long hours, you're checking things off a to-do list.
Yeah. But you get to the end of the week, and you're just exhausted. You feel older, maybe, but certainly not wiser. And you're just shocked at how little of substance has actually changed. All that scattered effort doesn't compound. It just vanishes into thin air.
And you mentioned noise before. Autopilot seems to thrive in one specific, highly available environment. External noise.
Absolutely. Noise is the oxygen for autopilot.
Yeah.
And that noise isn't just, loud sounds. It's the constant notifications, the endless stream of content. And what the sources say is most destructive, other people's urgency, their expectations, and their opinions.
Right. When your mind is always tuned to what's coming in from the outside, you're always just reacting.
Your mind never gets a chance to settle long enough to achieve clarity. And if you can't think clearly, you can't choose deliberately. You're just a pinball bouncing from one stimulus to the next.
And this explains so much. It explains why simply having free time is useless if you don't change your internal state first. If I get a random free afternoon or, a 3-day weekend, but I'm still just reacting to all that external noise, that free time just becomes 3 more days of distraction.
That is the core mistake people make. They think they need more time. But what they actually need, as the sources define it, is different time.
Different time? What does that mean?
It means time that is fiercely intentional, time that is completely protected, and time that is specifically designed to pull you out of that reactive current and return authorship of your life back to you.
And this is where the 2-hour habit comes in. It's the necessary intervention. But why 2 hours? Is that just an arbitrary number?
It's powerful not because it's some kind of marathon, but because it's long enough. 2 hours is about the window required for the nervous system to stop reacting, for that rush of circulating stress hormones like cortisol to actually dissipate.
And for all the internal chatter to finally settle down.
Right. Most of us jump from one stimulus to the next so quickly that this critical settling process never, ever happens. The 2 hours forces you to just stay still long enough for real clarity to return.
So if we look at this from an economic perspective, clarity is the real currency that we're trying to earn here.
It is. Without clarity, all your effort is wasted. Discipline feels like this heavy, burdensome thing. Goals feel completely overwhelming because you're fighting through this internal fog just to see them.
But the moment autopilot shuts off, even for a short time,
You feel a physical and a cognitive shift. Your breathing actually slows down, your thoughts start to organize themselves, and suddenly priorities that seemed so complicated a minute ago become obvious. The interruption is the gateway to real, sustained effectiveness.
So the very first purpose of this habit then isn't to achieve some big outcome, it's just to regain authorship over your attention. That seems foundational.
It is the foundation. It's everything. Where your attention goes, your life will eventually follow. Autopilot scatters your attention based on whatever is loudest or most recent. Deliberate time gathers it back up and points it toward what matters most to you.
That shift from constantly reacting to actively directing.
That's the beginning of real control.
But I have to ask this for the listener who's, they've tried every system before and they've failed. If autopilot is so powerful, so insidious, how can 2 hours of intention possibly beat it? Doesn't that just require a massive amount of willpower?
That is an excellent point, and it's where the source material makes a really critical distinction. Motivation and willpower. They're emotional. They're fleeting. They will always, always fail against the deep neurological programming of autopilot.
So you can't fight it with feelings.
You can't. You defeat autopilot not with emotion, but with structure, environment, and boundaries.
Structure is resilient where emotion is volatile.
Exactly. Motivation, it just fades when you're stressed or tired. Structure endures because it's already been decided. When you intentionally create this daily, simplified window where the distractions are physically removed, where your decisions are already made, where the outside world is literally barred entry, your mind doesn't have to fight anymore.
It can just relax into the work.
It naturally shifts into a deeper, calmer, more powerful mode.
This really implies, though, that the commitment has to be completely non-negotiable. If it's optional, if it's a when I get around to it kind of thing, autopilot is just going to eat it for lunch.
Autopilot is incredibly effective at exploiting any kind of vagueness. If the hours aren't defined, if they're not fixed in your schedule, they'll be stolen by external noise. And there's another crucial boundary here.
Which is?
These 2 hours have to belong to you, and only you. They can't be for clearing out your inbox or checking up on team updates or dealing with other people's immediate problems.
Now, why is that distinction so important? I mean, emails and meetings are still important work, right?
They're important, but they're maintenance. The goal here is to build your inner foundation. Emails and meetings are reactions to external demands. They don't compound your long-term value or your clarity or your skills. Without that inner foundation, which is built by quiet reflection and deep creation, everything else you do becomes unstable. It becomes prone to external control.
That makes me think of an analogy the source material uses. This idea of stepping onto the riverbank. If your life is a fast-flowing river, you're always just fighting the current.
And if you never step outside of that current, which is autopilot, you will always, always be carried wherever it happens to be flowing. The 2-hour habit is the act of stepping onto the riverbank. It provides the stability and the distance you need to actually see what's happening.
And from that stable vantage point on the bank, you can finally see the whole system clearly. You can see where you've been drifting, what's been draining your energy, and where you actually want to go.
It's not about escaping your responsibilities.
No, it's about choosing your responsibilities consciously.
And that conscious choice changes everything. Now, I know 2 hours can seem like a small fraction of a 24-hour day, but the sources promise that this 2-hour window doesn't just affect the time inside the boundary. It fundamentally reshapes the remaining 22 hours.
The ripple effect.
This is the ripple effect we really need to understand.
That sounds like a pretty powerful return on investment. So how exactly does it work? How do 2 hours change the other 22?
It's the principle of leverage. The 2 hours are powerful not just because of what you might accomplish within them, but because they provide a structural anchor for the rest of your day. For most people, the day is just one long, unbroken, reactive stream.
Choice just blends into reaction.
Right, and the day is shaped by momentum, usually negative momentum, not by intention.
So by inserting this protected window, you're creating a clear dividing line. There's before the 2 hours and there's after the 2 hours.
You literally reorganize the entire cognitive structure of your day. The mind operates hierarchically, and a small, powerful period of clarity, especially if it's early in the day, it influences everything that follows.
It's like steering a giant ship.
Exactly. A single, correct, directional adjustment made in the harbor carries forward for the entire voyage. That initial alignment grounds you, even if total chaos erupts later in the afternoon.
So during those protected hours, I consciously decide my priorities, my direction, my state of being. And once those decisions are made consciously, in that calm state, my subconscious starts to enforce them for the rest of the day.
That's the hidden engine of the ripple effect. The 2-hour habit teaches your nervous system a new baseline. You spend this non-negotiable part of your day in a state of calm, stable focus, and your body learns that this state is safe, it's achievable, and it's actually the preferred mode of operating.
And over time, my system starts to default to that higher, calmer baseline,
Like,
which means that in the other, more chaotic 22 hours, I'm less prone to that feeling of urgency. I'm less impulsive, less likely to make decisions based on emotion.
you're reacting less without having to white-knuckle your way through every temptation. You just become harder to pull off course. Small distractions stop derailing you completely. Your day stops feeling like a continuous firefighting exercise.
And starts feeling like something you are gently, consistently guiding.
That's it. And the sources point out that this also fundamentally raises your standards for how you use your time.
How so?
Well, when you dedicate 2 hours every day to deep growth and clarity, the rest of your time use just feels different in comparison. You become more sensitive to shallow activity. Scrolling through a feed feels intrusive and loud.
Meaningless conversations feel more exhausting.
Busy work feels obvious and wasteful. And this isn't a forced discipline. It's because you have tasted the alternative. Depth becomes inherently more satisfying than noise, and real progress becomes more rewarding than just cheap stimulation.
So discipline emerges naturally because distraction just starts feeling less compelling. You're not fighting to avoid things, you're just choosing a higher preference.
A long-term preference shift.
Yeah.
And because your mind has practiced entering this deep focus state for 2 hours, it can access that state more quickly outside of the dedicated window. As the material powerfully summarizes it, 2 hours of clarity prevents 10 hours of correction.
That is immense leverage.
It's huge.
And it creates this emotional resilience, too. No matter how bad the rest of the day gets, you know you have that anchor waiting for you. You know you'll meet yourself again inside that protected window.
And that stability, that self-trust, it reduces anxiety dramatically. You are no longer carrying around all these constant, unfinished mental loops. Your confidence grows simply because, for a fact, that you are showing up for the things that truly matter to you.
The foundation is stable even when everything on the surface is chaotic. Okay, let's get to the architecture of those 2 hours. The sources are very, very specific about the order here, claiming that if you skip the first hour, the entire system is basically undermined. Why is hour 1 so sacred?
Because most people treat productivity like an instantaneous switch. They sit down and they try to produce something immediately. Start writing, start working, start studying.
But you're starting from a deficit.
A huge deficit. If you start trying to produce without clearing your mental environment first, you're trying to create clarity while you're still carrying all the day's noise. The unread messages, the lingering worries, the comparison trap from social media, the expectations you haven't even processed yet.
You're essentially asking your fractured, reactive mind to perform its highest, most difficult function. It's not going to work.
We live in a world that is just so loud, even when there's no physical sound. Our minds are constantly crowded with perpetual input. By the time most of us sit down to focus, our attention is already fragmented into a dozen pieces, and our nervous system is still in a low-grade fight or flight from the morning's notifications.
So the first hour has to be about regaining control of that inner environment. It has to be quiet.
It has to be quiet.
What does quiet really mean in this context, though?
It means removing all unnecessary input for long enough that your mind can settle back into a state of coherence. It's not necessarily, aggressive meditation or anything like that, but it has to be intentional, non-reactive space. Silence is the fastest way to return authority to your attention because it eliminates the external demands that are always trying to fragment it.
Okay, but for someone sitting down in silence for the first time, that's often intensely restless. The mind starts racing. You get that physical urge to check your phone. The source material calls this a process of withdrawal, right?
It is absolutely withdrawal from distraction, which for many of us has become a core coping mechanism. Silence removes that easy buffer. When the external world is shut off, all the internal noise, the unaddressed anxieties, the suppressed emotions, it all starts to surface.
And that's the discomfort.
That's the discomfort. But the key is, if you can stay with it gently, your nervous system will exit that state of urgency. And only then does the space for real deep thinking finally emerge.
So what does the content of that first hour actually look like? If it's not immediate output, what is it you're doing?
It has to be non-reactive. So this could be slow reading of something substantive, like a book. It could be deep journaling, structured reflection on the day before, or it could be as simple as just sitting with a notebook and letting your thoughts clarify themselves on the page.
The key rule being one stream of attention.
That's the absolute rule.
Yeah.
No jumping between tasks, no checking external sources for research, and absolutely, positively no notifications.
So the whole idea is to gather up that scattered attention and allow it to pool its strength.
Exactly. This hour is designed to intentionally reproduce those moments where people typically have their best ideas, on a long drive, in the shower, on a walk. Those moments when the noise finally stops and the mind is just allowed to process things in the background. This is intentional reset time.
And the outcome here isn't a completed project. It's orientation.
Orientation, which is far more valuable than just wasted movement. You stop blindly moving forward and you start noticing patterns. You start seeing problems with real clarity, and you recognize your true priorities without having to force them.
And it also allows for this critical emotional discharge.
Yes, we all carry this subtle emotional residue with us, the tension from a meeting, the frustration from a difficult message, and that stuff unconsciously influences all of our subsequent decisions.
So if I don't process that residue, I might make a major decision in hour 2 that's actually being influenced by some residual tension from, hour 0.
Precisely. Silence allows those emotions to surface and discharge, which prevents them from hijacking your logic. The sources stress this. Power is clarity without tension. You want to make decisions from a quiet, stable center, not from an unconscious emotional reaction.
And finally, this hour reinforces your identity.
Consistently showing up in silence, without needing entertainment or external validation, sends this incredibly powerful message to your subconscious. It says, my inner world matters. My clarity is paramount. And that constant reinforcement reshapes your self-respect.
It's like building a boundary.
It is. That protected time establishes this crucial psychological boundary between the chaotic external world and your internal peace. And that boundary makes you less reactive and more resilient overall.
Okay, so hour 1 clears the lens. And now hour 2 can become the engine of creation, ready to work cleanly because that stability is already in place.
That's the critical link. The second hour is so powerful because the mind, which has been cleared and stabilized by the first hour, is finally ready to engage in clean focus. Real focus, the sources insist, should not feel like straining or pushing. It should feel quiet, stable, and undivided.
And the second hour must be dedicated to creation versus consumption. That distinction feels vital, but I think a lot of people confuse the two.
We confuse them all the time. Consumption, reading articles, attending webinars, listening to advice, it feels productive. It gives you an immediate hit of stimulation and this illusion of growth.
But it doesn't actually move your life forward.
Not an inch. Creation leaves physical, real-world evidence. Writing, building something, practicing a difficult skill, coding, solving a complex strategic problem for your business.
The rule is, if the work doesn't leave evidence of progress, it was consumption.
That's a great way to think about it. And to achieve this kind of creation, the hour has to be protected with absolute rigor. We're aiming for a flow state, which isn't some mystical thing. It's simply what happens when your challenge and your ability are aligned, your mind is calm, and the task is perfectly clear.
And to get that clarity, the sources suggest something they call the focus protocol. There are 3 things you have to decide before the hour even begins.
Strategic simplicity is everything here. The brain hates uncertainty, and it loves certainty. If you start the hour with a vague idea of what you're going to do, you'll waste the first 15 minutes just debating with yourself.
Which is autopilot creeping back in.
It is. So the 3 things are, number 1, the task. 1 clear task, not 5. Number 2, the boundary. Phones off, door closed, absolute silence. And number 3, the ending. You must know before you start when the task is complete. A specific output, a fixed word count, solving one specific problem.
Knowing the ending is what gives the focus its power. It provides the necessary containment.
Containment releases tension. The mind doesn't have to carry the entire amorphous weight of the whole project. It only has to carry the weight of the next 60 minutes. And that containment is instantly destroyed by one thing.
Multitasking.
The great illusion of efficiency.
We feel so efficient when we're doing it, but really we're just paying this accumulated cognitive cost.
Every single time you switch your attention, even for a quick glance at an email, it carries a cognitive cost. These costs add up, they fracture your attention, and they lead to mental exhaustion without any substantive accomplishment.
Multitasking ensures you stay shallow.
It does. Your mind never gets to enter that state of depth, which is where real insight, quality work, and complex problem solving actually live. The second hour demands undivided focus to sink below that surface level of thinking.
So focusing on completion, even if it's a small completion, is a kind of mental teaching tool.
It is. When you consistently finish something, even if it's just a rough draft, a single chapter, or a detailed outline, you are teaching your mind that effort leads to closure. Progress is profoundly calming to the nervous system.
It reduces anxiety because your system stops feeling stuck in these endless beginnings.
And that repeated act of completion shifts your identity from someone who tries to do things to someone who does things.
And crucially, the activity you choose for hour 2, it must be something that compounds over the long term.
Yes, it can't just be busy work or maintenance. It should be a skill, a project, or a creative effort that inherently increases your value, your relevance, or your future optionality. Learning for the sake of learning, just consumption, is an illusion of growth. The second hour is where knowledge gets applied and becomes genuine ability.
And this intentionality, it changes the entire metric we use for success. We stop measuring our days by how busy we were,
Which is autopilot's favorite metric.
and we start measuring them by what we created.
And that grounds your success in reality. You know whether the day mattered because there is physical evidence of progress. You stop chasing external validation or the feeling of busyness, and you start relying solely on the connection between your effort and a real outcome. Hour 1 clears the path. Hour 2 builds the structure of your future.
Okay, this all makes sense. But it brings us to why most people fail to stick with any system, no matter how smart it is. It always seems to circle back to this fundamental misunderstanding of discipline.
That's the huge psychological hurdle. Most people frame discipline as this harsh, grueling force, something fueled by pain or self-deprivation. And that reliance on emotion, on motivation, is exactly why the whole structure collapses under the slightest pressure.
And the sources make a really critical distinction here. They say discipline is neurological, not emotional.
Right. Motivation is emotionally unstable. It depends on you feeling good or excited or inspired. It spikes and it crashes. Discipline, however, relies on what you have already decided and locked into your system. When that 2-hour window is non-negotiable and fixed, your nervous system literally stops debating whether or not to show up.
So that entire internal emotional negotiation just gets eliminated. You don't wake up asking, do I feel like focusing today?
You just ask, what is the task I already assigned for the next hour?
And that elimination of inner conflict must free up an enormous amount of mental energy.
It does. Energy that was previously just wasted on all that daily decision-making drama. Most habits fail because they force you to expend fresh willpower every single morning. This system removes that decision loop entirely. The time is set, the task is predetermined, you just follow the pattern.
And the emotional nature of motivation, it creates these unrealistic expectations. We think progress is supposed to feel exciting all the time, but the sources note that real compounding growth is often, quote, neutral, quiet, ordinary, and ultimately unremarkable.
And discipline accepts that reality. It allows you to work even when you feel bored or tired or completely uninspired because the goal is consistency and accumulation, not a fleeting feeling of excitement.
People often abandon habits when they start to feel boring, mistaking that boredom for failure.
When in fact boredom is often the necessary sign that the habit is normalizing. The foundational strength is forming below the surface where you can't see it.
And every single one of these protected hours is what do they call it? A habit as an identity vote.
Yes. You are constantly voting for the identity you want to inhabit.
Right.
Every single day you show up in that window, you send a clear, undeniable message to your subconscious. I am someone who follows through. Identity compounds faster than any external result will.
And self-trust, which is really the bedrock of confidence, is built by that relentless.
Right. And discipline in this model isn't about fighting your environment. It's about aligning with it. When the structure, the fixed time, the absence of distraction is supporting your intention, the effort just feels so much smoother. You're working with the system you built, not against it.
It's why people who stick to this report feeling calmer overall, they're following a direction which is stable instead of chasing energy, which is volatile.
Exactly.
And I find this conclusion beautifully counterintuitive. Discipline in this framework actually leads to freedom.
It does. Freedom is not the absence of structure. It's the absence of internal chaos. When the major consequential decisions, when to work, what to work on, are already settled, all this mental space opens up. Anxiety decreases because you stop constantly planning and restarting and correcting your course.
And over time, the effort becomes a neutral, non-threatening, familiar part of your routine.
That's when the habit stops feeling like work and it starts feeling like who you fundamentally are.
Now, we have to talk about the biggest psychological saboteur, the thing that stops us from building that identity in the first place. The excuse loop.
Ah, the excuse loop. The quiet mental trap that trades long-term gain for immediate short-term comfort.
And excuses, they rarely sound irresponsible, do they? They sound rational. They even sound responsible. I'll start when things calm down, or I have way too much on my plate today, I'll do it tomorrow.
And the sources are really harsh on that idea of tomorrow.
What do they say?
They call tomorrow the single most expensive word in a person's vocabulary. Tomorrow feels safe. It removes the immediate pressure. It lets you avoid the discomfort of just getting started. But then what happens?
Tomorrow becomes today.
And the conditions are identical. The same fatigue, the same distractions, the same reasons to delay it again.
And that's the loop. It looks like you're planning with good intentions, but it's so destructive. Excuses are like painkillers.
That's a great way to put it. They relieve the immediate discomfort, but they don't heal the underlying problem. And every single time you accept an excuse, your self-trust weakens just a little bit more.
So you're trading your future for comfort right now.
That's the trade. You're trading your long-term momentum, skills, and confidence for a fleeting moment of comfort. The cost is invisible today, but it is devastating years from now when you realize all that time was simply lost.
So how does the 2-hour habit, this structure, how does it effectively break this deep-seated self-protective loop?
By removing the opportunity for negotiation, the time is fixed. The structure is rigid. Excuses thrive on flexibility and uncertainty. Structure suffocates them.
Excuses feel strongest before you act.
They flourish in imagination and fear. But the moment action begins, they weaken instantly. Action delivers clarity and evidence faster than any amount of logic or willpower ever could.
So this makes the habit a profound practice of self-respect. It's you saying, my word to myself matters, even when conditions are imperfect or I feel resistant.
You don't defeat excuses by arguing with them. You replace them by acting despite them. The disciplined person isn't locked in some internal debate. They're just following a predetermined pattern. Once that loop of internal negotiation is broken, movement creates options. Options create confidence, and confidence fuels more movement.
And that, finally, is the birth of momentum.
The birth of momentum.
Momentum. That's the phase where the effort stops feeling like resistance and it starts producing actual movement. It's the difference between struggling against inertia and just riding a wave.
And momentum only begins after consistency has been fully paid for. Think about pushing a stalled car. Those first 10 pushes, they feel completely useless. You're straining against this massive inertia.
And that's where most people quit, right before the breakthrough.
Right before the system starts to yield. But if you keep pushing, steadily, consistently, the car eventually begins to roll. And at that point, the quality of your effort changes entirely. You are no longer fighting inertia. You are simply guiding the motion.
And that is momentum.
The 2-hour habit is that daily, consistent push required to get you past the initial inertia. As that repetition continues, your mind enters a state of focus faster. The internal resistance decreases, and decisions require less emotional energy. Your entire system adapts to the pattern, and it just relaxes into the rhythm.
Momentum reduces friction because you stop starting over from scratch every single day. You stop renegotiating your commitments with yourself.
You just move with certainty. It also sharpens your decision-making. Your feedback loop gets shorter. You see what's working and what isn't, and you can adjust much quicker without all that paralyzing overthinking.
When you act consistently, you learn faster. Indecision starts to fade away.
It does. And there's a vital emotional consequence to this. You feel this lightness. Tasks feel less intimidating and setbacks. They don't feel like some kind of personal judgment on you anymore.
Because momentum absorbs shock.
It absorbs shock. A person with momentum can encounter a bad day or unexpected chaos or a huge setback, and they slow down, maybe, but they don't stop completely. They continue the forward motion. And this is vital. Slowing down is still movement, and movement preserves your identity.
It changes your perception of progress. You stop obsessing over whether you're going to achieve the big goal, and you start focusing purely on showing up today.
Because progress is now something you expect, not something you just hope for.
And momentum, it creates its own gravity.
It really does. Once it exists, quitting feels uncomfortable. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because stopping breaks a rhythm that your entire system has adapted to. Forward movement becomes the psychological default. And that's why momentum is always more valuable than motivation. Motivation is sporadic. Momentum is a continuous carrier.
As we move into our final thoughts here, this entire structure, it really forces you, the listener, to confront the most fundamental question of personal growth, doesn't it? Who pays the price for today?
Every single day, we make a quiet decision about delayed cost. And most people, they push the cost, the delayed effort, the avoidance of discomfort onto their future self.
And that future self, they inherit the weight of all the skills you didn't build. They have to live with the consequences of the avoidance habits you reinforced over and over.
The 2-hour habit, then, is not about instant gratification at all. It's a profound behavioral contract with your future self.
It's a daily declaration that says, I will not leave you unprepared. I will not leave you weak. I will not leave you dependent on luck or circumstance.
Most people prioritize their comfort today and just sort of hope that tomorrow will magically work out. Disciplined people reverse that logic entirely. They accept a small, manageable amount of discomfort today so that their future self can live with maximum choice, freedom, and strength.
This is the compounding effect in slow motion. A short, intentional walk today seems negligible, but 10 years from now, that daily consistency is the difference between physical strength and debilitating limitation.
You can't escape the trade. You can only choose who pays the bill.
And the 2-hour habit forces you to act like someone who cares deeply about the person you're going to become. Every single protected hour is an act of practical, long-term self-respect toward that future version of you.
And that ties directly into the fact that preparation is the unsung hero of all great success stories. It is invisible. It's unrewarded in the early stages. But when opportunity finally appears, preparation decides everything.
Opportunities don't reward potential. They reward readiness.
And readiness is built daily, in private, in those quiet, consistent hours. If you consistently repeat discipline, your future self inherits stability and optionality. If you consistently repeat avoidance, your future self inherits regret and dependence. It is simple, brutal arithmetic.
And ultimately, the habit provides something that might be even more valuable than productivity, and that's peace.
Peace does not come from doing less. It comes from the profound internal knowledge that you are not neglecting the things that truly matter.
The anxiety fades, the internal guilt softens. You stop constantly feeling like you're behind because you know you are moving in the right direction. And direction matters infinitely more than speed when you're building a life.
The 2 hours is not a sacrifice. It is the fundamental trade. You trade external noise for internal clarity. You trade reaction for direction. You trade short-term comfort now for profound freedom later.
And that trade, repeated daily, makes personal and professional change not just possible, but inevitable.
And the change won't feel like a movie montage. It's not going to be dramatic. It will shift gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. And then one day, suddenly, you will look back and realize your life's entire trajectory changed completely, all because you honored that quiet, protected contract with yourself.
So here is our final provocative thought for you to carry forward as you leave this deep dive. Nothing about this system requires special talent or external permission or a perfect starting point. It only requires one thing, a decision to stop letting your life be shaped by the invisible default of autopilot. 2 hours a day is not a small effort. It is a declaration of authorship. When you protect those 2 hours, you stop living reactively and you start living deliberately. And deliberate living changes everything, not dramatically, but permanently.